75th edition of the town hall. I'm coming to you from my other office here, so I'm not in my usual spot. But we're happy to have you. And I don't know, is Mike coming today? I don't think he is, right? I want to say not. So usually we have Mike, but today we're going to pretend that my friend Glenn Sarvati is Mike. Hey, Glenn.
Hi, Mike. No, hi, Glenn.
Yeah, you're going to be Mike.
Hi, somebody.
So my name is John Betts. I'm the CEO of Best Innovation Group. And Mike, who's not here, is our creator, host of Few Broadcast, who just does amazing things on a regular basis. Just recently, he posted an excellent white paper about digital onboarding. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. And Glenn Sarvati is with me. Glenn is my frequent host on the Big Cast podcast. We just finished our Thanksgiving episode yesterday, in which, weirdly enough, Glenn said he was thankful for ransomware. I don't know what that means, but he was just super thankful for it. He told it that was the first thing on his list. He's like, I'm grateful that ransomware exists. And I believe that, I hope they take big bank down, or I forget what, or big credit union down. I can't remember what he said, but let's thank our sponsors, CUNA Councils. CUNA, it's a national association that advocates for the entire credit union industry. So they have conferences, connections, resources online, pretty much anything you could ever want. If you're not going to CUNA, if you're not part of it, you should be. Correlation is the state of the art in terms of core connections, and they are just continuing to grow. They're the newest core on the block. And Mike Lawson, I don't know if you know Mike Lawson, but Mike Lawson actually wrote all of the correlation software in his garage. A lot of people don't know that, but he did. Oh, look, there's Mike Lawson. Mike, I was just talking about you.
I can't hear you. My dog's barking. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. I was just saying I was just telling everybody how you wrote the correlation software in your garage.
Oh, yeah. In my garage. Exactly.
Which I believe you're in right now, right?
And it's still in the same garage. Yes.
Oh, I could see that. Member Pass. I actually just had a great conversation with Forefront Credit Union today about Member Pass. My friend Zach Eigner and Zach and I were talking about how well that's going there. And they actually just talked to us about working with our 5 platform and the Q2 product to actually get where you enroll for 5 in the Q2 platform with Member Pass. So very, very cool stuff. We're very excited about that. And I talked to John Ainsworth very frequently, and he's actually working on a crypto type conference with our friends from Visions, who are doing some very cool stuff. So I want to get that on here. We need to have a discussion about that, Mikey, on this show.
Yeah.
And then see broadcast. If you're interested in lame brain ideas, if let's say you're bored and you got like 3 hours to kill, and you're at an airport, then I got the channel for you. No, I'm just kidding. He is one of the finest broadcasters, and his heart's in the right place. He's a good guy, and he's always trying to help the credit union industry. My pal Mike Lawson.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
And obviously Best Innovation Group. But let's get to the most important person on the call today. The one, the only, the man, the legend. He was born under a dark moon. A lot of people don't know that. Roger Grimes, one of the industry's foremost security experts, but more importantly, really honestly, one of the industry's nicest guys and one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Matter of fact, Roger, I was having a big conversation with a bunch of people. I was at a conference or something for 2 nights where I was speaking one night and hanging around for the next, and they were asking about quantum. And I said, oh, I'll tell you the guy. And one of them bought the book and read a bunch of it that night. Next morning, he's like, oh my God. So Roger has some really incredible books on quantum and what that's going to do to security. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
Scary.
Well, quantum, my favorite thing he ever told me about quantum is all the results are in another universe. He didn't tell me which universe, but he told me they're all in another universe. So welcome and thank you for joining us, Roger. And
Glad
then we have Glenn.
Yeah, and let me tell you, I love quantum stuff. And every once in a while, someone makes a mistake of asking me about quantum. And because I love it, that happened my son this weekend. I'm like, having some nice things. He's like, oh, about this. And about 15 minutes later, I looked at him. I could tell I'd lost him about 30 seconds in and just hadn't realized it. And
you're like, and then there's the quarks. And after that, and they was like, oh, my God, what are we going to do? No, it's amazing stuff. And technology, as it continues to crank along, is always super fun.
Yeah.
So we invited you here today. We were, some very interesting conversation on the podcast. Glenn, you want to set it up? Glenn.
I'll set it up as soon as I
There you
get back to my desk. I was wandering around.
Glenn,
Hurry,
you can't
Glenn,
just
hurry.
wander around your house.
We did an episode, what was it, 3 weeks ago, Mike? I forget when.
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
About the PAX terminal. I keep calling it controversy because I can't think of a better word for it. Krebs on security. And Roger, I think I saw that you were one of the contributors on the comments field at the bottom of the article, if I'm not mistaken. This all stems back to a situation where I believe it was FIS first found that the data packets coming out of these terminals were not the size that one would expect. They started disconnecting them from their service. The FBI then raided the warehouse of PAX down in Jacksonville, and it makes for interesting reading. I don't know how long it took for that little flame war in the comments field to really kind of materialize on Krebs on security, but there's all kinds of back and forth about, oh, this is just anti-China stuff versus this looks really serious. I think your point, Roger, was what do we know? Is anybody implicating PAX and actually doing this intentionally, or is it just a vulnerability in their software? So I've probably just said just enough to kind of complicate things further, but maybe if you want to pick it up from there.
No, that's perfect. So I've actually, this whole thing where we're accusing China of spying on us via hardware vulnerabilities has been something I've heard for 25 years. So most of my life, the big one is, your laptop spying on you, this, that, and, or the network spying on you. And I'm like, China is involved in most of the chips and stuff, right? So if you have a IBM, Dell, whatever laptop, if they want to spy on you, they could. If they get caught, it would be it would destroy their industry. They've been accused of it many, many times. And this is at least the second or third time where we know for sure that there's been this weird data coming off their devices. But I've always heard, let me tell you, I have heard for going on 3 decades now, but 2.5 decades, we have evidence that they've been spying and capturing our passwords. And I like, show me that evidence. Like, and they're always, they can never do it. Oh, I've got it's a secret this and secret that. I've actually been sent some of the internal secret information. It does not say that. It says that they found information that they don't know what's being done, but it doesn't say they're stealing secrets. But I don't, and let me say, I'm not saying the Chinese aren't. I'm just saying in every instance where they've ever been accused, we only know of 3 actual instances where the data actually came off, and no one's ever come back to say what that data is. And if the US government knows that it really is stealing passwords or whatever information, why would they not tell us, right?
Yeah, but to be fair, they did come out with some more ITAR kind of thing around Spectre. So Spectre was the chip vulnerability in IBM, right? Or that it was a vulnerability that, but you're right. I don't think a
lot of it is they're like, hey, it looks like it's a back door. Like it could be a back. And I'm like, okay, Windows by itself had like 120 vulnerabilities last year. Was one of them a back door? Who knows? Yeah. And let me say again, I don't want to defend the Chinese, but I also don't want to unfairly attack.
Yeah, I don't want to accuse them. I don't want to accuse anybody. But I think there are a lot of people who thinks that Spectre was literally doing that. That's probably the most recent one that I can think of. So yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Well, and that was, this error seems so obvious that it's a backdoor. I've yet to see anybody say that we know for sure that they've been stealing information, that we sniffed them and they were stealing confidential information or passwords. I think the PAX one is actually possibly more suspicious than the others because the company itself is not responding in a way that you would think. They're not explaining it at all where the data is gone. Like I think the big one, remember a couple of years ago, it was like, okay, all these servers and everybody's data warehouse. And I think it was Bloomberg broke the case that all these servers around the country are being spied on by spy chips, and Apple's involved and IBM's everyone's compromised. All those companies, Microsoft, Apple, IBM, all went, hey, it was not information being stolen from our servers. Like literally they're like, we got special clearance from the FBI to be able to tell you all that information was not being stolen. So if you look, that article to this day, I think is nothing but speculation. I talked to some of the experts in the article. They said that they were either misquoted or quoted wrong. Oh, wow. So I keep waiting for there to be actual evidence. And again, I hear the government has it. what if the government knows that the Chinese really are stealing secrets for sure? What incentive would they have not to actually confirm that for us? Like even in this PAX case, they said, don't use PAX. We're cutting it off. And you shouldn't use PAX technology information because the company is not being forthcoming and explaining what the data is. That alone means you shouldn't use it. But if the government or anybody actually has evidence that was actually stealing information, why would they not tell us that, right? Like I'd hear people tell me, oh, they found these Lenovo laptops in the White House are stealing information. If that was true, why would they not tell the rest of corporate America that Lenovo laptops had spy chips? Like, what's the incentive for them not to share with us the actual evidence?
Right. So let me back up a minute about these PAX terminals. So these are PAX is providing these ATMs. These are stationary ATMs, correct?
Not ATMs, right? Point of sale terminals.
Point of sale. Sorry, they are point of sale. They're stationary though, right?
No, I believe they're wireless in many cases.
Right. Okay. Because
Weren't
what
they like
I
in
read,
mom and pop shops and things like that?
yeah, what I read catching up on this was that they said it was geolocation data being sent. And my first thought was
the explanation that was given.
Aren't those stationary? Do they not, well, do we need to track their geolocation? Okay. But that was my first thought was, are they mobile? And they could be, I guess, maybe people who use them, but I know the bigger POS terminals are kind of hard to lug around, but whatever. And so these terminals, when somebody took a look at them, obviously the main processor said, hey, you're not sending that. There's extra data in your stuff or something along those lines. These packets look weird to us. And it was probably captured by one of many new different types of services, ThreadX, something like that could say, hey, this packet's malformed from our perspective based on almost an AI type concept. Like here's 1 million of these and these ones are all very different. And they should, one of these things is not like the other is what they should call it. And so those packets then were examined. And as an immediate result, they were removed and shut down by the processor. We're not going to accept those anymore. So those transmissions to the processor to process those payments were said no. And then following that, it became sort of, and this was the Krebs article, it became a full-blown sort of, hey, what's going on here? And by the way, Krebs has a history of doing this. He discovered an entire ATM sort of gang, about 5 years ago, Roger? That was, using most of the ATMs in Mexico or a lot of ATMs in Mexico were hacked and were literally Bluetooth sending out to something nearby track 3 data from the cards that were swiped.
Yeah, that guy, Brian Krebs, who I'm an acquaintance friend with, is a national hero. And why they haven't made a James Bond movie about that guy yet, I don't know. It's still shocking to me.
Because he got swatted after that for fun.
He's been swatted so many times. Like,
he probably
he's like, okay, guys, when you get down on the concrete.
They all know who he is. Yeah, the SWAT team shows up and goes, oh, it's Krebs. But yeah, so I just want to lay it out for everybody. So that's what we know. Now, so if that's true, and one side effect to me, Roger, would be we would see these cards and the data out in the dark web at some point.
Yeah. And exactly. Let me say again that if you had a major Chinese manufacturer that was found to be sniffing like that, exactly what happened to PAX, gone, no longer used, no longer going to be used anywhere outside of China and their allies, right? Boom. If they had a chip that was doing it on servers or laptops or whatever, it would literally destroy their industries. And let me say, maybe they are, but nobody has ever shared the actual evidence that they have been. But I hear it claimed all the time. And let me say this. You ready for this? This is the part. And I love my country. I love my country, and I love my country most. We for sure publicly know about many times we've implanted spy chips and other equipment headed for other countries. So what? we are
like that time we got caught hacking into Dubai's ACH to monitor things, and then I wound up sitting next to the head of Dubai Bank while I was in Lisbon doing a speaking gig, and he kind of looked at me funny, and I wound up having to change tables. You mean like that?
Yeah, I think, and another time, like apparently us in the UK hacked a bunch of cell phone, we stole all the secret keys for all these cell phones, like 1 billion secret keys. And like, spy intelligence agencies, that's their job, is to do these sort of things. But hopefully, and let me say, I don't think that we will do it. We do it in a very targeted fashion, and our intent is the best. We're not trying to steal intellectual property. It's like there's all these nation state attacks going on, and we do nation state attacks, but we're trying to learn military secrets and stuff. We're not installing ransomware to then hold private places, for hostage to steal $25 million. But it's a very crazy world. Who can you trust? Who can you not trust? Some of it is absolutely. Some of it's just politically motivated. They don't really have the proof, but they're like, don't use this person's stuff. But what you're actually happening right now is China is actually, because of the political threats and the real threats, and they've lost a lot of customers. Huawei's been decimated. That's one of their number one, manufacturers, cell phone and telecommunications equipment. So China's actually ramping up and creating their own semiconductor industry, even more so. They're actually going to come back stronger than ever. And then we're doing the same, right? We're making chip and semiconductor chip factories all over the United States, and we're going to be making stuff. So I think the end result is nobody's trusting anybody. You're going to end up like on the Ally versus Axis side. You're only going to buy that guy's equipment. And, this I think the errors of all this chip sharing and stuff that has benefited all our nations for decades now, I think that's coming to an end. And you're going to have more walled off things. And, you can't have this person's chip in here and versus that person's chip. And it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Or does it reverse itself a decade or 2 decades from now and we go back to, whatever. But it is certainly a mess. It is, and it's real risk. It's real risk, right? This is not theoretical.
So let me throw this at you. So this is what they're saying is happening. Processor sees this and they're going, hey, something's weird about these packets that are coming through here. The headers are too big or whatever Krebs caught. And so they stop processing. Then the FBI gets involved. But and the concern is that the at the chip level is where in programmer speak, there's a trusted encryption processor that's an isolated chip on the thing. You have it on your phones. That's how NFC works, is that to store those cards and things, there's this sort of trusted area that's built for that. It's like a special chip. That's, I think, the big concern. But let's talk about this, Roger. I mean, you remember the TJ Maxx hack, right? So you got TJ Maxx, right? And they've got a network that they got all their POS terminals on. And for fun, they thought, why not connect the HVAC terminals to it? Because why wouldn't you do that? That makes sense. Same network, right? And then one of the guys who runs the HVAC, and he's not a bad guy. He's just a dude trying to do his job. He has a VPN into these HVAC so he can turn the air conditioning off and on, so he can check the crack units, so he can see what's going on. And bad guys get into this HVAC engineer stuff, and the end result is they're able to travel all the way through here, and they're sending track 3 data right out of these. And I think at the time they were Verifone. I forget, Ingenico, one of those. I mean, this is the actual POS terminal sitting at a register, and they actually hacked the firmware of that so that it was just every time you typed in your PIN, they don't need to decode your PIN to get that data. They're just catching what's off the buttons. Why isn't that a more nominal way to look at this, as opposed to, this whole idea that magic chips, the trusted execution environment, got it. The T, as it's known. That's the name of the chip that is on all your phones and all of that. It's called a T. It's trusted execution environment. Nothing else has access to this, supposedly. Why are we guessing that this, and they're made in China, but why are we guessing that this is the problem and it's not something more like this? Is there something Krebs found that makes everybody believe that, that this is more likely?
Well, we know that the regular thing is far more likely. I mean, that's part of my argument too, is if a chip gets found, it decimates that chip manufacturer forever. No one's
ever going to buy from them again.
Well, and hacking is so easy and bad today without that.
Yeah, this would be a far easier play.
Yeah, I mean, today, socially engineer the person, right? I mean, you're in, you get everything
like
you want
right here. That's what they did with this guy.
Like you would think you would only use this, hardware chip vulnerability like we do when you need it to get in or something. But then, this year has been like the year of nation state, the year of ransomware, the year of MFA. This year, we finally had nation states like Russia literally compromising tens of thousands of people and multiple supply chain attacks that compromise tens of thousands of otherwise companies that would never be targeted. So really, it's kind of like all bets off, I thought I used to understand it, but these days that they do things that, used to be you'd hide your 0 days, and now you're just worming it across 10,000 or 100,000 people. It's a different world.
So we think, I would agree with you. I would tend to agree with you. I think it's more likely that this is the situation. Here's why. So have you, I'm sure you know who our friends are here, right? Want to tell everybody a little bit about APT1, or you want me to?
You can.
So our friends at APT1 are basically the probably number one hackers in the world, but it's everybody believes, and again, back to allegedly, I'll use the Roger Grimes terms, that this is a Chinese nation state backed or nation backed hacking group. Of course, he and all those guys are they say no, but and the reason we know this is because some real smart guy like Roger, who probably Roger knows, if I had to guess, they found this software. I can't remember where it was running, but just recently they found this software. They traveled back up through the software, and the hacker that was running it had a webcam, and they logged in, and guess what they saw? All kinds of Chinese military people and whatever. And
the real story slightly more, but it's slightly more detailed. But so I believe it was a UK or some other intelligence agency found the camera, and the camera for APT1. So they had an unpatched camera in the university. So China's APT groups typically go to universities, and they use the university setting where they do their spying. And
right.
One of the other intelligence agencies, which leaked it to us, found they had an unpatched camera. So we actually found out their names, their faces, and their names of that group, because we were able to spy on them and see their passwords and what they were doing for a long time. Yeah, that was a brilliant hack. I didn't know that it was another foreign intelligence agency, and they shared that. I think it was the UK, but it could have been Italy or Poland or something. But they shared that information with us. That was a brilliant hack of a hack.
Right. So what I'm interested in is, so Krebs finds this, the FBI jumps in. At some point we have to start pulling the chain to stop the train, and we need to do a little bit more. By the way, I just saw they caught more of the ransomware guys from the previous ransomware attacks. They just indicted a couple more, but if you want to follow this thread back through, first of all, if it was truly this, we'd know pretty quickly. I mean, someone would rip one of these things apart and be able to look at it pretty quickly. But it does bring up the concern, like all the people on this call have ATMs, all of them. And there ain't one of them anywhere, I think, that doesn't have some Chinese parts in it. I don't think Diebold, NCR, Kevin, who else? I always think it's Nixdorf, Waldorf Nixon. Isn't that it? What's the name of it, Kevin? It's the two guys from the Muppets is what I always think, but it's not them. But it's another really big company that, and even Verifone and Genico, all the major POS players, there's nobody on this call who doesn't have transactions going through Chinese hardware. It's just not possible. The laptop you're on watching this, most likely. Diebold Nixdorf, Kevin says. Okay. The laptop you're on watching this likely has it, Chinese hardware in it. There's just no way. They're the number one hardware manufacturer in the world. There's very little that you can find that doesn't have something with some Chinese silicon in it. Would you agree, Roger?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or, something where they might be able to influence it, right? Taiwan or something like that. But the amazing part about all of this is that there are absolutely people arrested for Chinese spying, but it is always, as far in every case I've ever read, it's been an actual person. Like, it was the Chinese, like APT1, or an employee. And let me say, I've worked for many companies that had Chinese employees, and those employees were spying on behalf of China. I've yet to see that you're exactly right. If they had a hardware chip, and I've heard that people keep telling me they do, that they've actually found this chip and they've decoded it, taken it apart, and proved that it was spying on us, but it's a secret report. And I'm like, okay. And I've heard that for 25 years. But again, if that's the case, what incentive would it be to actually hide, and especially in the political environment where we're trying to promote our equipment over their equipment? If we actually had evidence that the chip was actually programmed to spy, Why would we not share that with the rest
Welcome
of the
to a
world?
special presentation by Mandiant's
Yeah,
Threat
I
Intelligence
agree. Why
Center.
would we not
The
tell
series of
people?
videos
I completely agree. This was interesting. This is the video where they showed I think the webcam hack or whatever. But so is that the current position of the government? And are all these things locked up, Glenn?
I was going to ask that question of Roger because, I mean, based on the way we're describing it now, it still leaves me wondering, why is it that they went in and actually raided the warehouse?
Yeah, I just, Glenn, I'm like you. I want to know. I don't know about you, but I'm dying to know the results of that raid. And I think there's a 99% chance this disappears and we never hear about it. And I'm like, no. Tell us what you found one way or another. Did you or didn't you find something significant here? And again, let me say, there are many people that accuse me of being an apologist for China because I defend them by asking for actual proof. But I'm like, this PAX terminal thing, I do not like the idea that the vendor didn't come out and clearly state what this extra information was immediately. Like that's what I've also dealt with China and they don't always know what's going on. And they subbed it to a sub that created this thing that created this. Like I had to work with China and Japan to do a bunch of BIOS upgrades. It was a nightmare. And on top of that, I don't speak Japanese or Mandarin, but they really don't have an idea all the time about what's running on their stuff. But it is distressing that they didn't, even after a week or 2 weeks, or even today, they have not come out and said, this is exactly what it is here. Like if our companies got accused of that, we would have this fantastic looking white paper within 2 weeks and lawsuits going everywhere. Them, silence. And that is, is it incompetence? Is it a cultural thing, or is it that there's something to fear there? I don't know. And I'm only saying that I'm not going to accuse them of spying because I don't know yet. I haven't seen any evidence saying for sure they have. But boy, I would love our government to tell us. Like, it would be so nice.
It's interesting because I'm kind of hearing, it's a subtle message I'm hearing is that, you see no reason to believe that the really nasty suspicions that are out there are true. On the other hand, you're also saying, I sure wouldn't use these terminals, but for a different reason, because they're just not coming clean on exactly what it is that's going on. Am I interpreting that correctly?
No, that's right. I think there's enough fire here that, it's a risk and you just have to, I'm sorry, you didn't defend yourself well initially and I can't take the risk. But if our government came out and told us, okay, you've raided the places, you've got the chips, you've got the devices, you've sniffed the traffic, what's there? And if the traffic's encrypted and it's using a private key, well, you've got the chip that created the private key. So you should be able to tell us all private keys, all chip firmware level private keys can be determined.
Oh, I hadn't seen that one before, that the guy resigned the day after. That's a new one. But
Hey, he quotes Roger. He said, I think Roger's after me. I got to go.
No. So I'm so glad you invited me for this today, because this has just been this 25-year China spying on us, and the stories come up and they blow up big, and then they go away for a year or two, and then another one comes up. I just want the U.S. government to tell us, yes, we have confirmed that they were actually spying on us. Here's the evidence. Instead, we get all this speculation. It's a lot of news stories, and then it just kind of disappears. Like if we actually hear what they found in the PAX raid, I'll just be shocked. I want to be pleasantly shocked. Yeah. Please share the information.
That's where the conspiracy theory is going to come up too, because I could see, okay, we hear nothing, and I can see that still being interpreted two different ways. Nothing. They found nothing. They're embarrassed, so they hope it goes away, or ooh, they found some really bad stuff, and therefore they're not going to tell us because we'll be so scared. I could see people kind of assuming either of those things being the case.
Yeah, I guess, whatever you're leaning towards, right, before you read the.
Yeah.
So my question to Glenn is, what's the exposure here? So, for example, for the Creighton's on the call.
Exposure to who?
To the Creighton's.
To the credit union?
Yeah.
Well, at some point, I mean, if just like any other fraud, I mean, what was the exposure of the TJ Maxx or the Target or anything else? Well,
that's what I'm asking. What do we think that is this such a big player in that market that a high likelihood everybody on this call having cards, and maybe Kevin knows too. Everybody in this call having cards that would have been compromised by if this was true.
They were the third biggest player in the market, in the US market, as I understand it. So, and I don't think it was terribly regionally focused. I think it was more mom and pop focused. So if your cardholders went to mom and pops, and if it really turned out to be something, I would say there'd be a pretty decent chance that you had, the same type of exposure as you did after Target or TJ Maxx. Would you agree, Roger?
Yeah. And by the way, I'm also going to go on record as saying I think that drone probably has a Chinese chip in it, so maybe we can't trust it.
I was about to say, I'm pretty sure that right there is Roger, right? This one by the back of the car here.
I get it, my friend.
You are in Florida, and you are awful close to there. So
yeah. There was just another raid the other day that was like fairly close. And I'm 5 miles away from the Oldsmar water treatment plant where that one got compromised. It's all
I forgot about the Oldsmar water treatment plant. You haven't been drinking the water, have you?
Yeah, and let me say, I spent a lot of time in China with Microsoft. I was with Microsoft for 11 years, left there a couple of years ago. Probably for many years, I was in China a lot, and I was doing consulting on behalf of Huawei. And you're constantly worried about being spied on. And, it was interesting early on in China, when we visited China, it was like, you could just take your laptop, and then don't take any data on your laptop. Then it came to make sure you don't pick up any data when you're there, and don't use any. So, hey, take this new laptop that we bought you, and you can't log in while you're there. Like we were learning things, but and let me say, in China, it can be a weird environment. Like I'd be teaching, doing something, trying to tell them how to secure Active Directory or whatever, and they go, "Does Microsoft use firewalls?" And I'm like, "Well, yes." They're like, "What type? Where are they located? What are the firewall rules?"
Oh my
And I'm like,
what are the IP addresses? And by the way, where are the passwords?
Yeah, I'm literally like, I'm not going to share it because, and I would try to be, I was like, maybe they're just trying to quickly get up on firewall technology, and they figure if Microsoft's using the firewall, it's a good firewall to use. I was like, listen, our rules would not apply to your stuff. And I said, I'd have to talk to Joe Smith. Joe Smith's our firewall guy, and boom, 20 people wrote that name down. Like I was like, and I don't know if it's a cultural thing.
No one's ever heard from Joe Smith again.
But I was like, I literally once or twice went, if you're trying not to seem like you're spying,
you seem a little suspicious the way
like
everyone's writing down everything I say.
But I would say that I'm grounded in that we're spying too, right? Everybody's spying. Any sufficiently capable nation is spying on all the other nations, and I don't think that we're Boy Scouts and all of this, but we're probably, again, not stealing financial transactions and credit card. Like we're not stealing credit card numbers, or we would just break into the people that make the credit cards or something. But this is certainly risky. But I do feel like it's this, 25 years I've been hearing the Chinese are hacking us. I would love to know if we really have evidence. And let me say, I'll be surprised if someone after this doesn't email me to tell me that I'm wrong. And for sure, we have evidence and they've seen the evidence. I get these guys emailing me all the time saying they've got the evidence, they've seen the evidence. And I was like, but I've never seen it. And why wouldn't, if the government and the US government is trying to destroy the Chinese telecommunications industry, so we'll sell our 5G stuff and our chips and stuff, why would they not share it?
Yeah. And what's interesting about what you're talking about in the sense of the concept of not sharing it is it's either one of two things. It's either doesn't exist or it's so bad that, how many people on this call, just for fun, how many people on this call sort of just assume, like, when you buy a drone from DJI, they pretty much, everything you film's going to China. I sort of just assume it is. I just figure I'm cutting out the middleman. I don't care. You want to see my picture of the waterfall from whatever. So I think there's that, right? But in the sense of what we're seeing, this would be, if it was state sponsored and there was an actual chip that was modified to send personal information back to China. But how different is that than the SolarWinds? We know that's state sponsored. And we did nothing. And
SolarWinds, the Microsoft Exchange, the Camilla or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, this has been the year of nation states where they just blatantly hit you in the face. And by the way, we're saying China, APT1, Microsoft's report that came out a week or two ago about nation state attacks said 58% of all reported nation state attacks were attributed to Russia.
Right.
Next in line was either Iran or North Korea. It was North Korea, then
North
Iran,
Korea.
and China was number 4. And I got to tell you, I was shocked. I thought for sure China would be number 1, number 2. But according to at least what's being reported to Microsoft and what they're detecting, China was a distant number 4. They were like only 9% of the attacks, and Russia was 58%.
Yeah, and also Israel.
Yeah, that goes without saying.
I saw that report as well. So here's your Russian one, right? The Iranian one was an interesting one because that's like it has the People's Army of Iran hacking, meetup or something. I forget, but it's like a cool name, subset group. But I do agree. I do agree on those. So we know we have other ones. I mean, this is becoming a bigger issue.
North Korea is stealing real bank money,
right? Because they need money to finance
cryptocurrency. Like North Korea was number 2, which means they must be stealing a lot of bank money, is what I assume.
Well, we were just looking at something new kind of going. It's not really new, but a lot of people on this call have experienced it, called credential stuffing. So, but what was interesting to me, just to talk about it for a minute, so right now what they do today, I'll describe this credential stuffing because I think North Korea was one of the big culprits we were looking at. I was talking to a friend who runs a service bureau for hundreds and hundreds of FIs. I'll just say that. So the idea of credential stuffing is you go out to the dark web, right? And a good example is Robinhood. So you saw about the Robinhood breach, right? So our friends at Robinhood were breached. That's the investment company, which, by the way, here's my tip for the credit unions. If you know a company like this has been breached, right? Why not go search your stuff and reach out to those customers, search your history, their debit credit history. And if they've used this product, send them at least a little note that says, oh, by the way, if you used, oh, good job, Jim. If you've used Robinhood,
that's awesome.
And you used the same password as you did for us, please change it. And if you're really cool, just lock them out, make them call and tell them, that's what happened here. You can see my security's just going nuts because the robots downstairs moving around. I'm in my robot space. This is a live picture of our robot, and he just
oh my Lord,
they're down there playing with it, and it just won't stop. But so I gotta get you out here.
You're the only guy I know that personally has a robot like that. That's amazing.
You got to come out. I want to have you out, but we've talked about that before. So then they go out, and Robinhood's information winds up on the dark web, right? Then they take and they download that big type, that thing. And now what they're doing is they don't even care that it matches, which is interesting to me. They pile it all up and they use a script and they go, okay, let's take and shoot this. I'll use, let's take and shoot this at the ABC credit union, right? And they'll just take every email and every password and just start blasting it. Now, they don't care if they get in at this point. They're just looking to see if any of these will get to the MFA. So then once they go through that credential stuffing, they get a subset of this list. So, the Robinhood subset list of people who use the same password and email for ABC credit union. Let's say there was 1 million in this list and they get, 10 hits. They then sell that to someone who's an expert at getting around the 2FA, right? And which would be, I think somebody on this call, I forget who it is, wrote a whole book on how to get around 2FA. I'm not sure who it was though. But I know you could buy it on Amazon. His last name's Grimes. Anyways, so then once they do that, that goes back out to the dark web for a much higher cost. And then they take those 10 accounts and compromise or case them. So what's interesting to me is that with this model, this is a credential sort of thievery. But when we look at the actual chip stuff, that would be like if your home banking server, chip was compromised, and every time it did the decryption on the password, it just said, oh, here's a new password. Let me send it to somebody. But where I was going with this was, Roger, I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because here's what I see happening. Here's my thought. If it were me, and I'm not saying, I would do this, so don't send me off to Krebs. I don't want to be turned into Krebs, but I would. First step is I would actually, and by the way, if I can think of it, I know they're doing it. I would use some geolocate the email addresses. For instance, Jim Yates is in Wyoming. I don't need to check people that have email addresses that are geolocated to New York. That's a pretty simple process, right, Roger? Take an email address.
Yeah, you want me to tell you what I have learned the last couple of months, and it's one of those things where, hey, it's been around for 10 years, and Roger, you just learned about it. There are multiple services where you can pay $5 or $10, put in your name, get back every password that's ever been compromised, the websites that you like to go to, where you live and where you work. And they're able to track you using with your cell phone geolocation data and application IDs. Like it's one of those things where someone told me a national intelligence officer, oh yeah, we've been using these for 10 years. And I went to these sites and I paid to have my stuff done. I was amazed. It was like a fusion center. If you know about those, the amount of information that is being accumulated at these commercial websites. So you're talking about your passwords. Yep, passwords, where you live, where you work. It just says percentage chances of where he lives, where he works, the applications I use on my cell phone, places that I've traveled. It was quite shocking. So they actually accumulate this information from all sorts of hacks, along with some public information, and it's amazing what they can come up. So you can do it open source and what's called open source intelligence, but there's commercial sites for $10. You put in the person's name and they bring back. So let me say, like, I used to always think, I haven't done this in years, but I used to think I was being brilliant because use a different login name and password for every website. So I do frog, FB for Facebook, frog TW for Twitter, frog A for Amazon. So I thought I was just unique and different password. Nope. They listed all. My password's been compromised 12 times, not because of me being social engineer, but the websites I belong to, like Adobe and Facebook and Twitter and stuff, got compromised. There was the pattern of my passwords. They then had a list of all the other websites that I'm known to be on and registered on. Because they're doing password spray attacks and stuff, and then places where I live and apps that I use, and it was like, wow, it was quite. And the guy, the nation state guy, was like, of course, this has been around for 10 years, and he gave me a whole bunch of sites I could go to check out. But I was like, oh, okay. I didn't realize that they basically have now accumulated this information. It's like you're buying it from Facebook, right? Facebook sells information about you, but these sites, like, no, they're not anonymous. It's this guy, and here's everything we got.
Yeah, that's where I was getting to. That was something I wanted to talk about. So exactly what you're saying. So here's an example of what you just said. So let's say that the core of Roger's password is this %X frog, right? And so he knows that, but then he used sort of an algorithm to say, okay, I'm not saying you did this, Roger. I'm just pretending. But if you did, tell me now before I tell the world. But anyway, so he says, hey, this is my Facebook site. I'm going to grab the first initial of whatever it is. And, there's 8 letters in Facebook. Every time I do that, I'm going to do 8 letters plus 1. So it's 9. So that's his little algorithm. And so Amazon, that should be 7, I think. There are 7 letters in Facebook. I'm going to grab the first 3 letters. Maybe that's the answer. But what I'm getting at is when you pare down this list with the AI, right? And particularly if you already have several of these, like you just said, there was a couple of these that you got, the AI is going to be able to take and derive this. And we're going to start seeing that. We're going to see very targeted attacks, and they're going to stop. They're hitting us really hard right now, to the point where they're like taking Canadians down, almost like a DDoS. That is not what any hacker wants to do. I think they want to pare down this list from 1 million to 100 really highly, likely to be using, say, Jim's service for his credit union. And then they want to try to derive using another AI perspective. And then finally, the 2-factor, aspect of it. So that's what I feel like is the next level. I mean, can you I mean, how are people going to use AI in these attacks? Because there was a great article. I'll bring it up here. I just was going over it with my innovation club.
Did that say 120,000 emails?
What's that?
Did that just say 120,000 emails you have in your inbox?
Yeah. I don't like to look at those. Those are very depressing. You don't want to read.
I thought I did. I thought I had a big inbox. I got to tell you, you again win.
I that's mostly from Mike. He just won't stop. But you know, I was just going through this, and this was fascinating to me, and I think you'll find it pretty fascinating as well. That the AI, the prediction you and I had some time ago about see, that's bad right there. The prediction we had about AI some time ago. Hang on. See, I am secure. I'm following your plan. It's coming true. And we're discovering that is just, really, really happening. Why is it not coming up and asking me about this?
Yeah, my ultimate prediction was we're going to have good guy threat hunting bots in AI, the bad guys bots, and the best algos win.
Right. And we said and we were talking about hunter gatherer. Kind of hunters and gather, these guys are hunter gatherers. I guess it's fighting me. But anyways, point is that there was a really good article that just came out from Attack Miter that was talking about the use of AI and hacks. And I thought it was really interesting because it just completely scales up, what these guys can do in terms of right now, it just feels like they're clumsy. And to me, I'm very worried about what it looks like when they get to this point. And now we're starting to finally see it. It's happening. It's becoming reality because AI is becoming commoditized, which was interesting. So let me throw another one at you. I helped a group the other day. Is AWS. He got a $90,000 bill from AWS. Roger, can you guess what happened?
I'm assuming
that was over 2 days. It cost him 90 grand. Well, can you guess?
Well, I'm assuming they were being used as a data dump for ransomware or something like that, or something.
Close. They hacked into the AWS account using an open API, and they set up. So when you go into AWS, you can pick these size of computers you can set up. They set up like the T3 supercomputer, right? That it costs like $150 a minute to run, and they were mining Bitcoin and Ether. And they just set it up to run, and they put in their account number, and they just turned it loose. Well, it sat there, ran for 2 days before the dude noticed it. And he called me and literally crying. I wrapped in the fetal position because he had a $90,000 bill from Amazon. I was able to track it back to what they had done, and Amazon was nice. They actually said, no, you don't have to pay this. Just don't let it happen again. But
that's cool to hear. That's good to hear.
It is. But here's my point. If they could, this relies on a massive amount of GPU, correct? Of this kind of processing power. But isn't that also the same thing that this would need? So how long before we start seeing these kinds of things, but instead of running this, they're going to be running the password break,
Well, I mean, no doubt the nation states, sufficiently capable nation states have been doing that for a while, right?
Well, that's your quantum theory, right?
No. Well, yeah, that as well. Yeah. IBM announced they had a 100 qubit computer this week. I'm like,
I know, I saw that.
Who doesn't?
Let's do a podcast on that. Let's catch up.
But
talk about that.
But yeah, the AI people or the intelligence agencies are so far ahead of us, again, with fusion, centers that do that. Even like, have you ever seen the Bloodhound technology?
No.
So that's an open source tool anybody can download. But basically, you go into Active Directory, you give it a super user account, put it in any Active Directory environment, and it will map all the relationships. It's called Bloodhound threat hunting or something, but it will map all the relationships of all the computers in your environment. It tell you like what people belong to what groups, what services and groups are on all these PCs. And essentially you're like, okay, I'm here and I'm on A and I want to be Z. and you literally just basically the the implementations of these that have been scripted. You click on A, you click on Z, and it gets you to Z in half a second. Like literally, it collects all the information, downloads it, maps it. And let me say, this is 10 years ago. I saw a guy write a script for a penetration testing team at Microsoft, a guy named Man Wen. He's working with somebody else now, but he wrote this script, and it scared me to death because I said, okay, this guy in a pen testing team wrote this. Nation states had to have this and something like it a long time ago. And that's just that's just where we're headed. Anybody that's manually breaking into computers in an environment, that's the suckers.
Yeah.
They're automating it.
Yeah. You're going to automate it. But the thing is, you need resource to do it. And so that's what's fascinating to me is watching. This has become a pandemic, this mining thing.
Hey, wouldn't you love to know how much of the resources they've just estimated or used for malicious means?
I would absolutely love to know.
It's got to be huge. It's got to be a huge percentage.
Right, because the other thing they're going after is people running their own, NASA's. That's another one we see a lot of. But yeah, but taking it back to the Crayon here, I know. Let's use this last 9 minutes for two things. One, Roger, you're always really great at this. Spit out your what to do. What's the best top 5 things everybody can do? Because what I worry about is what I don't want people to hear is, oh, go out and buy shiny new stuff. Go find this Bloodhound thing. Go do that, because that's not the answer. The answer is really blocking and tackling. You've said that many, many times. Let's cut those out, and then also let's talk about what you got coming up. I know you're writing another book. You have to be, and I want to know if you're allowed to share and what it is. So, well, let's spit out the top 5. I know your favorite.
You only need 3.
Or 3.
Only need 3.
Okay, let's do the top 3.
Fight social engineering. It's responsible for 70 to 90% of all successful attacks. However you fight it, policies, technical defenses, education. Number 2, patch your software. That's responsible for about 20 to 40, is involved in 20 to 40% of attacks. Number 3 changes over time, but it's these days it has to do with password reuse or password guessing. One of the two. The password is either already known, it's been socially engineered, stolen, or they're guessing against it. Like Acme said, there is in 18 months they detected 61 billion password spray attacks. But
yeah, that's what we're seeing. That's the same as the credential stuffing. It's just a different word for it.
Yeah. So those 3 things account for 99% of all attacks in the world today.
And there's a lot of ways to fight all of these, and most of them are pretty low tech. Would you agree?
I would say that absolutely. If people just concentrated more on fighting those things, that it would actually, the solution would be cheaper than trying to buy the bright, shiny devices that really don't work.
Even vendors, right? When we're talking about patching, and that's what we found out with SolarWinds and all of those
or like everybody's like, we're going home, everybody get on VPN. Well, it turns out people aren't patching the VPNs all that well. And now one of the number one most compromised software programs, it isn't Windows, it's VPNs, right? Yep. I mean, the same, and let me say those 3, the top 2, social engineering and patching, is responsible for about 90% of all attacks and have been for the entirety of computers. It's not new.
Yep.
It's just that we don't treat them as if they are that onerous. And it's the idea that those 2 things cause 90% of all the attacks, and that the average company only spends 5% of their time and resources and money to fight those 2 things. That fundamental misalignment is why we are hacked so badly.
Well, there you go, folks. And I can tell you that if anyone on the planet knows the right things here, it's this guy. So, all right, what are you working on? What is it, Roger? What's the book? Quantum Defenses of Quarks in Another Galaxy. What is it?
Yeah, so actually, I just released through the Cloud Security Alliance. I just released a quantum white paper. If you put in Cloud Security Alliance, quantum, Grimes, I just released a white paper on what every company should be doing to prepare for the coming quantum migrate. If you don't know this, if y'all don't know this, in the next 2 years, your credit union, your company is going to be involved in a massive crypto migration. Everybody in the world, and it's coming, and most people don't know it is. And it will soon be one of the number one projects that your company is spending time on, a massive migration to update your crypto from traditional asymmetric encryption to quantum resilient encryption, post-quantum encryption, they call it. But anyway, that's kind of old news. But from that, I am working on 2 books. I'm actually writing a book now called So You Never Thought You'd Understand Particle Physics. I want to take everybody from electrons and quarks to quantum field theory, one chapter at a time, and prove that you can learn it. If you've always wanted to learn all of that crazy stuff, I'm going to take you slowly, step by step. That's through it. And then what's funny is I'm actually working on my first fiction book. And it's and I have a really good plot, and I only hope I've only been writing nonfiction for 20 years. I'm really trying to. I've actually hired a fiction professor to help me write better, and I'm getting guidance, and I'm trying to writing a fiction novel is the hardest thing I've ever done, and I don't want to do it in a crappy way, so I'm trying to do it in a good way. Yeah, that white paper there, I think everybody should download that.
Okay, I'll make sure this gets posted out there for everyone, but I completely agree. And we've talked about it before. We've talked about crypto readiness, crypto inventory. If you don't know what kind of crypto you're using inside your organization, you're behind the 8 ball. And I'm excited to read your fiction book for sure. If I come down, will you help me learn particle
physics? Yeah. Oh yeah. Quarks. We'll talk about quarks and virtual particles and quantum field theory.
What about the PIM particle? Can you help me with the PIM particle? That's probably the most important one to me. I want to be able to shrink like Ant-Man and grow like Ant-Man. So this is way too nerdy for everybody, I bet, but we can't help ourselves. We always do this, Roger. Fight social engineering. Make sure that all your software is up to date. That means patching. That means just making sure that even, and if it breaks something to patch it, get with your vendors. Don't hold them to account is what Roger's saying. And then, encourage everybody to not use a password at work that they use anywhere on the web ever. Like that should just be, some like on a tablet that you bring down. Thou shall not reuse password from web in corporate setting or something.
You know what I didn't put there? Make sure your chips are not sourced from China.
Yeah, because
I could one day add it, but so far not.
So far not. We don't need to. Yeah. Well, and then if the PAX thing becomes more, will you come back out and talk to it, especially if you're,
sure, but I'm learning from y'all. I'm learning from y'all. Y'all have all the good info.
I don't think we do. Richard, can you share a link? Yes, I can share a link. I will do that. I'll do that for David right now. All right. Well, I think we're going to call it here. I always enjoy talking to you, Roger. I was looking forward to this. So thank you.
Always enjoy talking to you. Great. I got to come see your robot.
You come down to Colorado Springs any day. Because we got to talk security on it anyways, but I'll have to send you the latest. We just got back from a senior care center where we have physicians using it to help seniors who can't get, all the way into did you know that if you can live at home as opposed to in the home, you can live like 20% longer as a senior. So these robots would enable people to do that, and we're trying to drive that cost down. We have a really, really cool story to tell.
That's awesome, dude.
But it's got to be secure. I can't let Roger or the Chinese people with their chips in there, to scam my elderlies. I have a really cool video of us dancing with them. You'll dig it. We did a dance party with all the seniors, and
oh man, that's fun. So cool, man. That's great.
Yeah,
that's terrific.
I'll send you some of it, and I'm gonna put this one out. Yeah, Jim needs ones for his parents. Jim,
number 4, build a robot room.
Yeah, so Jim, you can come. Where we were was in Lafayette, Colorado, not too far from you. Next time I go down there, Jim, I'd love to have you come by and take a look. So I'll send you a link. All right. Well, I'm going to put this out, and thank you for indulging me on my whiteboarding while you talked, but really kind of helps me just to draw because
that's awesome.
Everything you talk about
that makes this the best discussion ever.
Yeah, I just enjoy sort of poking around and trying to learn. So and I always learn so much from you. So. All right, guys. Well, another great town hall. We'll make sure this gets out there. Here is I'm putting the link out there right now. Roger, as always, when you get your next book, all you have to do is let me know, and we'll make sure that we talk to everybody about it. And your number one fan for your fiction books right here. So can't wait to read it.
Thanks, everyone. Nice talking to you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, everyone.